This is the podcast of ENCACT, the European Network on Cultural Management and Policy. In this series, we interview extraordinary professionals from the cultural management and policy community. Join us to hear their stories, the secrets of their success, and their advice for creating innovation by inspiring new policies and practices in the cultural, education, and research sector.
I am Pravali Vangeti, and today I'd like to invite you to listen to the special podcast series produced in the framework of the ENCATC Congress 2024, Culture That Matters, Interdisciplinary Approaches for Sustainable Futures, which was held from 18th to 20th of September in Lecce, Italy. At this occasion, our global community of researchers, academics, cultural practitioners, policymakers, artists, and emerging professionals converged together to explore interdisciplinary approaches for sustainability, a theme that is not just relevant but profoundly transformative for the cultural and creative sectors. So without further ado, let us dive into these conversations right away. In this episode, we listen to Francesca Imperiale, the Associate Professor of Business Administration and Accounting at the University of Salento in Italy, as she introduces the keynote speaker to the 2024 ENCATC Congress, Professor Salvatore Rizzello, the full Professor of Economics and Director of Scuola Superiore Isufi at the University of Salento in Italy.
The task to introduce the keynote speaker is not so easy because it involves the explanation of choices made in designing the Congress, its perspective, and the direction of discussion that we would like to foster under the overall theme Culture That Matters, Interdisciplinary Approaches for Sustainable Futures. Let me start telling you about a comment ENCATC received from a renowned scholar in the cultural policy field when the office announced the keynote speaker and his speech. That scholar wrote, "This is the worst keynote at a cultural conference I've seen in a long time. He comes not to praise culture, but to bury it. This is anti-culture." Without going into the scientific details or the reason of such a comment, which anyway the author does not offer to explain, rather asking for being removed from the mailing list, this is for me a clear example of human behavior that does not embed sustainability value. That is, in the specific case, the respect for cultural diversity, thus the respect of the other, that being another perspective or another living or inanimate being. Is this type of knowledge building useful to promoting sustainable futures? My response, and I hope yours too, is not at all. That said, how do we as educators, seekers, and builders of knowledge, as cultural operators and organizations, want to educate, develop methods and tools, finally behave for sustainability, if we continue to see and deal with sustainability like an endpoint of human organizational actions and not like the starting point, like something external and alien and not like normally embedded, like a set of information to provide for greenwashing and not like a sound accountability towards others, just like reclaiming art and culture for the common good and then being humanly inconsistent in action? With this question in my mind, I solicited the ENCATC board to focus this year on the relationship between culture and human organization behavioral changes towards sustainability as the cornerstone of an economic transition that require a conscious transformation of behaviors towards the common good. Culture has a crucial role in shaping behaviors, as well as behaviors influence culture. If we accept an anthropological perspective in conceiving culture and focus more on the learning process that, with or without awareness, undoubtedly culture embodies and activates. This means also underlying the great power and responsibility that organizations managing cultural contents have on people education and in building, shaping behaviors through narratives. Cultural institutions, museums, archives, theatre, and industries such as film, music, video games, artists, and creative people, despite the differences in their mission and business models, they are all economic agents because they use scarce resources to fulfill, directly or not, growing and diversified needs for their audiences, being those education, information, communication, or leisure needs, being those conceived as public goods or as private goods. Despite their differences, they have in common the production of contents able to become culture, regardless of either the way they collect the funds needed to survive and grow, or the contribution to economy that they can produce in terms of employment and wealth. This explains a first meaning we attribute to the first part of the Congress title, Culture That Matters. Every organization in the culture and the creative sector produce culture that could matter in fostering sustainable futures. Several reports underline the power of culture and creative sector to inspire change by helping people to envision and build a world in which diverse ways of living are sustainable, biodiversity is restored, and new meanings for well-being and resilience are learned. Those reports even ask for actions to foster cross-sector approach with the aim to make the effects of this power flow in other sectors. Being called culture and creative industries, it doesn't not mean that they are automatically banned because they are not sustainable. And for these reasons, government should not make more policies that support them if they create more wealth and jobs. In my opinion, the problem is poorly posed by those who propose to throw away the work done over the last 30 years. Even industries can produce shared value if they behave in the right manner. But what does it mean to behave in the right manner? To respond to this question, we first should have as the unit of analysis or point of view the entire planet, where different cultures coexist in harmony, having agreed on a common sustainable future. Then biodiversity and cultural diversity should be included both in the problem setting. Thus, the response may vary according to the patterns that characterize, from one side, the tradition of the administration's conception, and from the other side, talking about sustainability, the model you refer to. I will spend a few minutes more to explain better these 2 points. First, when I refer to the tradition of the administration conception, I refer to the fact that worldwide there are different traditions in conceiving the administration of resources. For example, according to my best knowledge, in the Western world, you have 2 dominant conceptions. The Anglo-American one, where you mainly have a transactional approach, and the Napoleonic one, where the approach is more institutional. Those approaches give rise to different conceptions of what a public good is and what a private good is, as well as they assign different roles to the market and to the state in dealing with the concept of common good and the related policies. Other traditions of administration exist too, even they are more marginal or less practiced, such as those of commons or kibbutz, for example. And I'm not considering the richness of models offered by the Eastern world. In this frame, culture that matters is not the dominant one, is not culture which divides, but the one able to build bridges, to mediate, the one which finds its foundation in dialogue to recognize differences, find common values upon which working to reduce the opposing forces. So, the further keyword to include in the problem setting, I think, should be dialogue. Second, talking about sustainable futures, we must agree on the model of sustainability to refer to. It is well known that since the Brundtland report, the concept of sustainable development changed across time. We all agree that the sustainable development comprises different dimensions. That's the environmental, the economic, the social, and the cultural one. However, the relation between each of them is not well clarified yet. The synergy between those dimensions is generally explained using two different models, where the cultural dimension is not well represented. The first model represents them through three concentric spheres, of which the economic and the social ones are analyzed as dependent on the environmental one, which therefore is dominant in characterizing the sustainable development of a territory. The second, however, represents them through three interdependent but equally independent spheres as constitutive components of the concept of sustainable development. According to this last perspective, therefore, development of a sustainable territory would be to simultaneously achieve environmental, social, and economic sustainability objectives. Agenda 2030 and its sustainable development goals reflects the attempt to reach this ambition. However, in practice, it's not so easy to take care of the interdependence effects, to approximate how nature functions. How to take care of the butterfly effect in the human action? Maybe the other keywords in the problem setting might be interdependence, that's acting according to a butterfly effect philosophy. This reasoning brings directly to the second part of the Congress title, Interdisciplinary Approaches for Sustainable Future. That is intended to be a warning not only to overcome barriers, the well-known silo effect, an aspect that has not been new in our debates for a long time, but to outline the need to assume a holistic perspective on dealing with the human action and the planet, thus conceiving them as a unit of analysis and not as two separate ones. I don't have already solution or example and acknowledge that the path may be different. Anyway, this would be the direction of discussion that we would like to stimulate based on the frame I just outlined. And ENCATC, I think, is the right platform to do that.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode from the ENCATC Congress 2024 series. You can find episodes addressing other insightful sessions of the Congress as part of the series on the ENCATC website. We truly hope that these podcasts provide you with new perspectives and reinforce your commitment towards co-creating sustainable and conscious cultural and creative sectors. Thank you.
You have been listening to the podcast of ENCACT, the European Network on Cultural Management and Policy. To learn more about us, our activities, and how to become a member, visit encact.org.